A devastating injury is destroying Chicago's plans, and nobody's talking about it. The Bears' second most important draft pick has been out for 2 months, and the situation is way worse than they're letting on. Luther Burden III, that gem we took in the second round with the 39th pick, still hasn't set foot on the training field. And you know what's most concerning? Ben Johnson expected to have him ready from day one, and now he says it's day-to-day? Day-to-day after 2 months? That's crazy. I'll tell you this. When a coach like Johnson says he expected to have a player ready and doesn't, something is very wrong. This kid hurt his hamstring in May, during the OTAs on May 20th, to be exact, and here we are on July 25th without seeing him on the field. Do you think this is normal for a soft tissue injury? But let me tell you why this injury is so critical for the Bears. Burden isn't just any receiver. This guy comes from Missouri, where he was an absolute machine. In 2023, he had 846 yards and 9 touchdowns. But in 2024, his final college year, he completely exploded. 1,212 receiving yards, all-sec selection both seasons, and earned Associated Press All-American honors in his sophomore year. And you know why Chicago bet so much on him. Because we desperately needed a reliable number 3 receiver. DJ Moore is our WR1. Rome Odunze came in the first round as our future WR2, but that WR3 role was completely open. Burden had the perfect tools, speed, sure hands, and experience being the first option in a high-level college offense stop. But now, while he's sitting on the bench rehabilitating, do you know who's taking those critical reps with the first team? Olamide Zaccos and Devin DuVernay. And don't get me wrong, these are solid veterans we signed as free agents, but they came here to be depth, not to be plan A in training camp. The reality is that the Bears bet big on Burden. $10,965,000. Fully guaranteed. Did you hear that right? Fully guaranteed. In fact, he's the first player drafted at the 39th position to sign a fully guaranteed contract. That's the confidence Chicago had in this guy. And you know what else worries me? That Chicago did something historic by drafting him. It was the first time since 1967 that we took 2 pass receivers with our first 2 picks. Colston, Loveland in the first round as a tight end, and Burden in the second as a wide receiver. That's the confidence they had in this guy to transform our offense. Johnson is trying to stay positive. He says that Antwan Randall L., our receivers coach, is bombarding him with information in meetings that the quarterbacks are taking him. Aside in walkthroughs, that they're using every second to keep him mentally prepared. But I think there's something deeper here. You know why I think this? Because hamstring injuries in young receivers can be tricky. It's not like a knee injury where you have a clear recovery timeline. Hamstrings can deceive you. One day you feel good. The next you have a setback. And for a receiver who relies on his explosiveness and change of direction, a poorly managed injury can affect his entire career. Also, think about this. We're less than 2 weeks from the first preseason game against Buffalo. If Burden isn't practicing now, when will he have the chance to develop chemistry with Caleb Williams? When will he fully learn Johnson's system? There's no substitute for real speed reps, and every day that passes is a day lost in the development of a rookie who should be fighting for an immediate role. But wait, because it gets worse. We also have other injured rookies, Shemar Turner with the ankle, and Za Frazier for personal matters. Do you see the pattern here? Our draft picks aren't available when we need them most. If that surprises you, wait to hear this. Dandre Swift finally told the truth about his disastrous first season in Chicago, and the words he used are going to impact you. I don't think I produced enough to contribute to more wins, obviously, were his exact words. And then he added, "We won 4 or 5 games, so I can't sit here and talk about anything positive." Finally, someone in that organization admits reality. But let me explain exactly how brutal Swift's season was. He had 253 carries, the most of his career, 959 rushing yards and 6 touchdowns, but he only averaged 3.8 yards per attempt. 3.8. That was by far the worst mark of his career, Doc. Do you realize how brutal that number is? Let me put it in context. In Philadelphia, in 2023, when he went to the Pro Bowl, Swift had 229 carries for 1,049 yards, averaging 4.6 yards per attempt. Here in Chicago, it fell to 3.8. That's the difference between a productive back and a problem. And you know what else is concerning? That Swift isn't a young back learning the game. This guy has experience. He played in Detroit, where he had solid seasons, had that explosion in Philadelphia that got him to the Pro Bowl, but came here and looked lost. But let's analyze why Swift failed in Chicago. First, the offensive line was a mess. There were no holes, no consistency in blocking, and Swift constantly had to fight for every yard from the line of scrimmage. Second, Luke Getsey's offensive scheme didn't utilize Swift's strengths as a backfield receiver. Remember what Swift could do as a receiver? In Detroit in 2022, when Ben Johnson was the offensive coordinator for the Lions, Swift not only rushed for 542 yards and 5 touchdowns, but also had 48 receptions for 389 yards and 3 receiving touchdowns. 3 receiving touchdowns. That was the most of his career. Johnson knows exactly how to use Swift. He's known him since his days in Detroit, understands that he's not just a between-the-tackles back, but can be a mismatch nightmare for linebackers on short and medium routes. Johnson also knows that Swift is more effective when he's not carrying the ball more than 250 times a season. And you know what's the big difference this year? The offensive line. Chicago was aggressive in free agency and signed Joe Thuney, one of the best guards in the league, and Jonah Jackson, another solid guard with experience in successful systems. This offensive line has the potential to be completely different. From what we saw last year, Thuney comes from Kansas City, where he was an integral part of 2 consecutive Super Bowl championships. This guy knows what it takes to win, and his arrival in Chicago isn't just a technical upgrade, but also a boost in mentality and leadership on that offensive line. But I like Swift's honesty. When he says, there's always something to work on, always something to improve. The team's success is paramount. Everything else will fall into place. That's what I want to hear. A player who takes responsibility and understands that individual stats mean nothing if the team is losing. And you know what's the craziest thing about Swift's situation? That Chicago practically didn't touch the position in the draft. They only brought in Kyle Monangai in the 7th round from Rutgers. This tells me 2 things. First, that Johnson really believes he can fix Swift. And second, that the organization is committed to giving him a real chance to redeem himself. Monangai is interesting in his own right. 5 years at Rutgers, 3,222 rushing yards and 27 career touchdowns. In 2023, he led the Big Ten with 1,262 rushing yards, and in 2024, he set new personal records with 1,279 yards and 13 touchdowns. Swift is already praising Monangai, saying he's a great addition and that he's not lacking anything from what I'm seeing. He describes his style as confident, says he's very low to the ground, and great catching the ball out of the backfield. Swift is mentoring his own competition. But that's nothing compared to what's coming. A veteran receiver visited Chicago this week, and his career could be ending. DJ Chark was at the Bears facilities along with 5 other free agents. Chance Campbell, Thomas Gordon, Peyton Hendershot, Matt Landers, and Jervarius Owens. And I'll tell you this could be his last shot in the NFL. This guy is only 28, but last season with the Chargers was a complete disaster. Only 4 catches in 10 games. But let me remind you who DJ Chark was at his best. In 2019 with Jacksonville, his 2nd season in the league, he was an absolute threat. 1,008 receiving yards and 8 touchdowns. He was selected to the Pro Bowl, That year he averaged 14.4 yards per catch, showing he could be that vertical threat every offense needs. What happened after that explosive season? In 2020, he had another decent season with the Jaguars. 53 receptions, 643 yards, and 5 touchdowns. But since then, it's been constant injuries and inconsistency. The saga began when he went to Detroit. In 2022, the Lions signed him expecting him to be their #1 receiver, but injuries limited him to just 11 games. Just 42 receptions, 518 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Not exactly what Detroit was expecting when they gave him that contract. Then he went to Carolina in 2023, seeking a fresh start. But again, injuries and inconsistency followed him. The Panthers expected him to be a key piece in their offense, but he couldn't stay healthy or consistently productive. And last year with the Chargers was simply brutal. 10 games, 4 catches, 34 yards. 34 yards all season. For a receiver who once had over 1,000 yards in a season, those are career-ending numbers. And you know what's most interesting about Chark's situation? His own words. When asked if he's going to play in 2025, he says, "It depends. It will have to be something that makes sense from a family standpoint and from an X's and O's standpoint. To get up and go to any team just for the excitement, I'll always love the game. But at this point, putting myself and my family in a great position is the ideal for me." This man is being selective when he should be begging for a shot. But I understand his position. He's been in the league long enough to know that not all teams are created equal. Not all systems will use his skills correctly. But let's break down why Chicago would make sense for Chark. First, Ben Johnson as offensive coordinator. Johnson showed in Detroit that he knows how to use multiple receivers in different roles. His system doesn't require all receivers to be the same, but each to have a specific purpose. Second, our current situation at the position. DJ Moore is the established WR1. Rome Odunze is our future WR2, but with Burden injured, that WR3 role is completely open. Chark could be that specific vertical threat we need in certain situations. Third, the financial aspect. Chicago has over $13 million in available cap space. A veteran minimum contract for Chark won't break the bank and could be a low-risk, high-reward gamble. But is it worth the risk? I think it is, especially considering our current circumstances. Olamide Zaccheaus and Devin DuVernay are solid as depth options, but don't have the explosive upside that Chark can offer when healthy. Also, think about this. Chark still has a career average of 14.4 yards per catch. That means when he touches the ball, it's usually for significant plays. In an offense that's going to rely heavily on efficiency and explosive plays, having someone who can stretch the field vertically might be precisely what we need. And you know what else I like about the idea of Chark in Chicago? There wouldn't be any immediate pressure on him to be the offense's savior. With Moore and Odunze handling most of the targets, Chark could focus on doing what he does best, creating vertical plays in specific situations. Also, consider the internal competition this will create. With Burden eventually returning from injury, we'd have a real battle for those third and fourth receiver roles. Competition brings out the best in players, and that could benefit the whole unit. But the truth is that time is running out for Chark. At 28, with his recent history of injuries and limited production, this could genuinely be his last chance to prove he can still contribute at an FL level. Do you think Chark can revive his career here in Chicago? Or do you think Swift can improve those 3.8 yards per carry with Johnson coordinating the offense? And what do you think about this mysterious Burden injury that's remained unresolved for over 2 months? I'll tell you this. These next few days are going to be critical to the future of the Bears. An injury that's dragging on too long that could affect the development of our most promising receiver, a running back who admits his failure but has a new chance under a coordinator who already knows his strengths, and a veteran who is literally in his last chance to keep his NFL career alive. These three situations can completely define our offense for 2025. If Burton doesn't recover soon, if Swift doesn't improve his production, if Chark can't contribute, then we are looking at a season that could be very similar to the last. But if everything goes well, if Johnson can maximize Swift, if Burton returns, healthy and ready to contribute, if Chark can be that complementary piece we need, then we have the elements for a real offensive transformation. Leave me your comments. Which of these three stories worries you most as Bears fans? Do you think Johnson can fix Swift's issues and return him to his Pro Bowl level? Should we sign Chark as insurance while waiting for Burton to recover? And more importantly, how much longer can you wait for Burton before it becomes a serious problem for our offensive plans? If you want to stay up to date on every Bears move, on every update on these critical situations, you need to subscribe to this channel right now. Because I guarantee tomorrow we'll have more explosive news about Chicago, and you can't miss what's coming. This season is going to be different, but we need these pieces to fall into place. Like if you believe Swift can return to his Pro Bowl level under Johnson. Subscribe if you think we need to sign Chark immediately as insurance. This is the most informed Bears family on YouTube, and you're part of this community that lives and breathes navy blue and orange. Bear down, Chicago Bears. See you in the next video.